Hi, I'm Maureen. Nice
Hi.
to meet you. Everyone's born into a family, and then you can create your own spirit family. So we are here with Barbara Marx Hubbard. You have lived a long life and have always had this one focus. Where did you start?
I would say I started when the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb on Japan.
Now, I also saw that you went to college. And did you have a major that you had in college?
I asked to major in the future of humanity. Of course, there was no such thing. So I ended up majoring in history and psychology, but they didn't have the subject I was interested in.
And it's very amazing because in that era, not very women had the privilege of having a formal education. So I'm sure that helped you become a critical thinker and learn the techniques of persuasion and understanding information.
I don't think so.
Really? I had this expectation that that's what college would do for a person.
You might think so, but for me, because Bryn Mawr was a wonderful college, if you wanted to study an existing subject like art or history or science, but if you were looking for an answer to what's emerging and you wanted to go somewhere to ask questions,
interesting.
I didn't find it. So basically, the first year I mainly read. Now I did a huge amount of reading, but I didn't have a professor. I wasn't fortunate. Some people had wonderful professors. So then I took my junior year abroad, and so college, I just missed what I would have liked.
Got it. So then what, I mean, you have been like a lone messenger in a lot of ways, because you have been speaking this message since probably 1951 or somewhere around that time. And
no, I have not. I got married in 1951.
Okay.
I didn't start when I got married.
Aha.
I mean, I had a wonderful husband, and we were interested. His question was, what is the new image of humans commensurate with our power? So I married him on the question. But then I started to have babies. I had 5 children. And Earl was doing painting, so that we were not really engaged. I lost track of the question, and then I got very depressed.
And then how did you pull yourself out of that?
Well, I decided that, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the first thing I asked is, what is happiness? And so I was in Lakeville, Connecticut, and I thought I'd interview my friends to see if I could find anyone happy.
Interesting.
There wasn't a single person that said, I'm really happy. They were comfortable. Things, they had their children. They were doing a lot of farming and stuff like that. And then I read Abraham Maslow. Here was the key. He's the first psychologist to study wellness rather than illness. He studied the self-actualizing person. And in his book, The Self-Actualizing Person, what he discovered is that everybody who was self-actualizing, happy, joyful, and productive had one thing in common: chosen work. They found intrinsically self-rewarding and of service. So the wife and mother, and I adored my children, but it wasn't my vocation. And I didn't have a vocation, so I knew from my study of Maslow what was missing. What was missing was life purpose.
And how did you finally arrive at your purpose? I can tell you that so many people search, what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I can remember the moment I had my big aha, and it was because someone looked at me and said what it was, and it was like bells and whistles went off, and I went, that's it! That's what I've been searching for. And how did you finally pull yourself out of, you recognized you were in a depression, obviously, because you can't pull yourself out unless you do. So what were the chain of events that happened?
Then I read Maslow.
Okay.
And then in the book, Toward a Psychology of Being, Maslow said, be bold.
Be bold.
Follow your heart's desire.
Mhm.
So I thought, I'm going to invite Maslow for lunch. So
I
called
remember
him.
hearing this story a long time ago.
I called
Okay.
him up, and I said, you're doing so much to save my life, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to take you to lunch in New York. He said yes. So I went to New York. I had lunch with him, and we became friends. And he said, your desire for purpose, meaning, and direction represents life. And he gave me a list of 300 names that he said was the Psychian network, Good Psyche Network, EU Psyche. And he said, these are the people over the years that I've found who are, this was before the Human Potential Movement, that are really working for the good, for potential.
So these were living people who were either,
all of them, like
were they authors or were they
Thomas
just?
Merton, Irvin Laszlo, yes, these were well-known people.
I tell people that Thomas Merton was Thomas More in another lifetime. I don't know if it's true, but that's what my guidance has told me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you read his writings, you could see that maybe coming through. At least I did when I read his work.
So what I did was I wrote them all a letter and said, I'm going to do a new kind of newsletter. And I would like you to tell me what you think is the next step for the future good. And I will publish what you write in my newsletter. And then I did that. And I had no idea if anybody would respond, but a lot of them did. So I started getting letters from well-known people who were telling me what they thought was the next step for the future.
And then you published it, and then you created a network of people.
I did.
Fabulous. So that's really a very important thing. And in today's world, a person might do that with video interviews, maybe.
Well, it's whatever, you see, in my case, I had a deep question when we dropped the bombs on Japan, which is, what is the meaning of our new power that's good? So I wasn't just...
And you're referring to the new power as nuclear power.
Scientific, technological, industrial, military power.
Right, and I know that, like in the book that Neil Donald Walsh wrote, he talked about how you actually asked that question of President Eisenhower.
I did.
And he just looked at you and said, I don't know.
I got to President Eisenhower just after he was president in 1953. And, Mr. President, I have a question for you. Wow. What do you think is the meaning of our scientific, technological, industrial, military power that's good? And he said, I have no idea.
Now, there are people who will tell us that there were a small group of people who were pushing the power energy, or the misuse of power, I'll call it, in a certain way so they could control humanity. And I'm certain that you've probably heard of some of this. What's your take on that?
What are you talking about now? I don't know which people were trying to misuse.
Well, I try not to mention a particular group, but what I'm implying is a global elitist group that wanted to control the masses.
I don't believe that.
Okay, you don't believe they exist, or you don't believe they are?
I don't think there is a
controlling?
coalition of global power that's trying to control the masses. I think there may be lots of people of global power trying to use the power for their own purpose.
For their own agendas.
But I don't think there is a cabal. I don't think so. And that these people all have children and grandchildren now. I doubt that they are doing that.
Interesting. Well, you know, from a perspective of what I look at it, is I say that energy influenced people and pushed society, particularly American society, in a certain direction. For example, in other countries, you don't see the same, I'll use the word thrust, of sex in advertising, in regular advertising that you do in America, which makes no sense to me. All of the countries, including America, has pornography, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about how we have used advertising a certain way, and that you don't see it anywhere else. And I wonder where that came from. And it's just like a rhetorical question. It's not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I see those kinds of things, and I think maybe there is such a
But
group
that's
that's,
not the, see, I think there are people trying to control power. I'm not saying that. But what I'm looking at is where is the direction for the good of this power? So I wasn't so much concerning myself with a global cabal,
right,
as much as I was, if you have power that we used to attribute to gods, particularly in science and technology, this was only not just the bomb, but now it's artificial intelligence and nanotech and biotech and quantum computing and genetics and robotics. These are vast powers, and I could foresee that there would be vast technological power.
got it,
And so when I said, does anybody know
yes.
where,
Well,
and the answer was no.
yeah, and I think your point is well taken, because what we focus on is the direction we're going to go. So if we're not paying attention and not looking for what is the good of this, then we might end up where we don't want to be.
Well, I think so. And, because the power was new, and because there wasn't a lot of experience with starting with nuclear, starting with, you could destroy the world with a couple of bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've been fighting wars forever.
Mm-hmm.
But there was wait a minute. Not only are we going to have this power, but so will Russia, so will this, so will that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, of course, many countries do. So what happened is it put a brake on the use of power, particularly atomic bombs and nuclear power. And then when we got into biotechnology, I happen to know Jonas Salk.
Okay.
And Jonas Salk invited to create the Salk Institute people
Right.
who were just discovering the meaning of DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you can engineer DNA, not only can you explode a nuclear bomb and have power over and destroy, but you can change the genetic code of the human.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have nanotechnology, you can create, like atoms do, molecule by molecule, cell by cell. So I foresaw the powers of gods being given to the human species.
Before they were, I'll use the word spiritually ready, emotionally ready, spiritually ready.
Nobody was ready, but at least the question, I'll tell you what I discovered.
Okay.
An answer.
And that is?
I discovered through reading Teilhard de Chardin,
Okay.
and he was a Jesuit Catholic priest who wrote a wonderful book, The Human Phenomenon, and he said that when the noosphere, which he thought of as the thinking layer of Earth, now it's the internet, and I'm calling it the planetary nervous system.
Okay.
When the internet, his thought was, gets its collective eyes about what's good. That is to say, when the nervous system, let's just say the internet right now,
Right.
starts to talk about what's working in health, in education, in economics, in health, and so on, when the noosphere gets its collective eyes, he said, as a Jesuit, it will be the Christification of the earth, or love. What I saw at that time, since you asked me a question about my vocation, I was so moved. I had an evolutionary insight that this was right, that we had no idea yet what the meaning of our power is, but let's say we do know, that my vocation was to help that to happen.
Say it again, that your vocation
Was to help the noosphere, and now the internet,
to help,
get to know what's good.
yes,
That was my vocation.
yes.
It still is.
And yeah, and we're still working hard at it.
It's a big vocation, but the thing was, it was a good vocation.
Yeah,
And it
For
was a
sure.
great vocation, and it still is.
I agree. And it's so remarkable that you have been doing this for such a very long time. And I feel like sometimes we've only scratched the surface in terms of finding the good and seeing the good. Even for me as a mystic, teaching people, in classes, in the classroom, I'll say, you know what, if somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you're not happy about it, go ahead and make your mutter, like, what's the matter with that guy? But then pray for him and tell yourself some silly little excuse that they are in a bigger hurry than you, or they're they've got some bigger emergency than you, so you don't stay stuck on what you don't want.
Well, that's very true, and the best approach to that is heart math. Like, I was actually thinking about it the other day because I was critical of somebody. And I said to myself, I don't want to be critical.
Right,
What should I do? So just takes 1 minute to tell you this. What you do is you pause.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been critical of someone. Then you put your hand on your heart.
Okay.
And you breathe deeply 3 times on your heart. And then after you've done that, you bring to your attention the image of something that you absolutely love. It could be a child, a puppy dog, anything that you love. And contemplate it for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the heart, the image, the breathing, what it does, and they have this scientifically, they see what happens to the nervous system. So the nervous system is going like this, and if you do that, the nervous system calms out.
Yeah, I can feel it recalibrate. I mean, even as you described it, and I'm participating with you.
It's a nervous system reaction which is measurable.
Interesting.
And they have a scientific equipment to see what happens when people do. This is their simplest technique. But they're basically saying you can shift from fear to love.
Yes, we all can shift from fear to love.
They have technologies and methodologies that are you can have it with school children, you can do it with people worldwide. So it's not like you have to become a deep, spiritual student to do this. Mm-hmm. Anybody can do it.
Anybody can learn it. Very
you
cool.
have to want to, that's the only thing.
Right. And you have to want to, and you have to be willing. Because I would think it would take a certain amount of effort to remember to do it and to give yourself that window of blessing. And I feel the same way as you. Every once in a while I've caught myself being critical of someone or something, and I've done something similar. Not exactly the same, but very similar. And although I've not studied heart math, I often begin a meditation where I ask people to think of something that they really love. An animal or a pet or an infant. Some little one that can't give love back. So it's all you loving them. It's all about your love. Now, how do we move this to a global scale? How do we bring it to the level that it needs to be?
Well, I think you start out where you are, and each of us does what we can. Like, I'm a teacher. Mm-hmm. I have reached thousands and thousands of students, and so that's one small thing. And books and tapes and stuff like that. Then I am actually doing a big course now called Awakening the New Species in You. And I have hundreds and hundreds of students, and I have every famous guest that I know. I just interviewed Thomas Hubel and Bruce Lipton and Irvin Laszlo and Greg Braden. They're all on it with me, and they all have huge mailing lists. And we will be working toward a planetary awakening where everybody can activate their mailing lists, what they already know that works, and put it on the internet, and ask the average person to say, what would you like to create, and create little small groups of people who want to create and put themselves up in that big new story. Tell the new news of what's working.
Excellent.
That's doable.
That's very doable. And this is a year-long program. Has it started yet?
Yes. The year-long program is a course, an intensive I'm doing. The big idea would be an internet new news program that shows what's actually working in the world. And an invitation for people to participate. It would be telling a new story.
Yes.
The new story is we're being born as a co-creative species.
Well, it's so funny because in the book, Waking Up in 5D, one of the things I say is, it's a new game. We're not playing by the old rules of good and evil and taking care of yourself and letting the chips fall where they may. And instead, a new contract with someone isn't good until it's good for both of us. And that's part of the new rules. So going back to this wonderful idea of all these networks and then the inspiration to have these pockets, where are you at in the development of that? Is that already in place or started?
No, it is actually being written about. I am involving people in the idea of it. And when I finish this intensive, I will be moving toward that.
Good. Can a person sign up for the program that's in place now, or is it like, or too far along?
They can still sign up.
And if they sign up now, where do they go to sign up? How do they sign up?
Humanities team.
humanitiesteam.com?
Yeah.
And is there a fee?
Yes.
Okay. So they pay the fee and then they get in, and do they catch up, or do they start where number one is and they just
They'll
finish
start
later?
where I am. I'm working on, I have 52 codes from what I call my own universal self. So we're 52 weeks, and I just completed code 29. So we're approximately halfway through. However, it's all recorded, and everybody can listen to it, and they can come in because I do them live every week.
Got it. So if they were to join now or next week, then they would have some catch-up work to do, but they could then,
Right.
they could still participate where you're at and then work their way through the historical.
They could. They absolutely could, and people are forming small groups now, and here is something really, it touches the heart. We have a process in the small groups from the people working on the internet with me, and there are two questions that people in the small groups ask each other. One, what is your deepest heart's desire? And two, what is the unique genius in you to realize your deepest heart's desire?
Wow.
Now, it's a very interesting question, because most of us don't know our deepest heart's desire. It's not like, oh, I'd like to be a good teacher or a writer or this or that. So, like, I went into my deepest heart's desire, which was to help this thinking layer, the noosphere, turn on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's way beyond a personal vocation. So this is, but nonetheless, it's a vocation that I can participate in. And so then...
And lead the charge.
And what is my genius about doing it? First of all, I had to get at what it was. When I was able to say yes to it, here's what happens when you say yes to your deepest heart's desire, if you can access it. It turns on inside of you an impulse of creativity. So your own genius turns on.
Interesting.
So let's say my genius might be as a communicator.
But don't you think that you did this in stages, because the inspiration to contact Dr. Maslow had to have come from that place, don't you think?
Yes, and so that's why it came from actually being depressed and having my own response to depression.
Right.
To say, okay, there's something inside of me. I won't accept depression.
Mm-hmm.
I won't just try to drug it out of myself, nor will I live with it. And so I would say the thought was, I'm not expressing depression. I'm going to find out why I'm depressed. I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not I have to be happy all the time, but I have to know how to pursue it. And then I discovered from Maslow, I have to pursue it through vocation.
Interesting. It isn't just pursuing it, it's pursuing it through vocation.
It has to be vocation. I just didn't pursue happiness.
So when you say vocation,
life purpose.
how would that translate into action? When you say vocation, are you saying like you have to find a job that allows you to do that?
I don't.
What do you mean by that then?
I mean, I had to find a way to communicate what this possibility is, and eventually I saw it was a possibility for conscious evolution.
Yeah.
Then I got a publisher who wanted to publish a book that I wrote.
Got it.
And then I got support. In other words, I took baby steps.
Right.
I didn't like suddenly jump into an internet program. But
Well.
now, because I took all those baby steps, like you wrote a book, you're going to China, you're taking those steps. The thing that made me, at 88 years old, so turned on, is my vision of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Is way beyond what I can do personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be reaching out, but I'm thrilled about it.
Well, and it seems to me that you were uniquely suited, because every step of the way you kept being given opportunities and introductions to people of influence who understood you enough to be sympathetic without necessarily offering a solution, and that opened doors for you.
Nobody offered a solution.
Nobody offered a solution.
Well, no,
That's, I mean, that's profound. It's like,
nobody had a solution, but I began to discover one, which
well,
is
because you were on that mission.
The only one who did was actually Teilhard de Chardin. But he offered a solution which wasn't even feasible. There was no internet.
Right.
He offered a vision of what it could be.
Right.
And then I read Sri Aurobindo, The Life Divine.
That book I'm not familiar with.
It's one of the greatest books of evolution.
Okay, so then say it again, so our listeners
The
can...
Life Divine.
The Life Divine by
Sri Aurobindo.
Okay,
who was
by
an
Sri
Indian
Aurobindo.
sage. He and his partner, the mother, really identified the entire story of evolution, and they saw we're becoming a new species.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it Gnostic human.
Not the knowing human.
And this, yes.
The plugged-in human. That's so interesting because I tell everyone, you know, the new human, the new normal, everyone's going to be plugged in. Everyone's going to be able to read each other's thoughts. Everyone's going to have empathy because they can't ignore what's in front of them.
Yeah, so the new human, I believe, is an emerging species. And so I'm doing a whole class called Awaken the New Species in You. So I'm now attracting people who feel something new is being born in them. Mm-hmm. So you see, it's step by step by step. And you have to, when you have a big vision, you have to be able to feel rewarded by small steps. Mm-hmm. You have to feel, I feel like it's serving the big process. So it's like with a mother with a child. You feel rewarded if the baby has learned to nurse. Mm-hmm. Now, it looks like a really small thing your baby can nurse, but if it doesn't, it's going to die. Mm-hmm. So the mother, this is why the feminine co-creator does well, the mother learns to appreciate small steps in her children. Aha,
that's very well said. No one, let's go back to the idea, just to like give us a recap. No one had the ability to, first of all, you were able to identify that there was a serious lack, serious piece that was missing of the new science. Right?
Question.
and you went on a hunt to find the solution, initially thinking that it would come outside of you, and in the process of this expression and also going inward, you found the solution. And I want all of you to recognize, as you listen to this fabulous teacher and speaker and visionary, that Barbara Marx Hubbard has never abandoned her heart's desire. And there have been times in her life that she's had to set it on the back burner, but it was always there, simmering. And I would like for you to recap for our audience this idea that small groups can form, and they can start by working with some of the programs you started, because then they can be hooked in with other people. There's some kind of way that can happen.
Yes, the networks are forming, definitely. And I'm going to be working towards the larger connecting on internet. So then I will work through all my colleagues, all my friends, to say, let's have a planetary awakening together.
Nice. So you have been listening to Barbara Marx Hubbard talk to us about the great planetary awakening that we are already in process.
Right.
The baby has been conceived. I don't know if it's made it down the birth canal yet.
Well, I also have a great partner in my friend Mark Gaffney, who his phrase for this is a planetary awakening in love through a unique self-symphony, which is to say everyone's voice heard. So let's say Mark and I are doing what we call joining genius. Now, joining genes, you have the babies.
Yeah.
What happens when you join genius? More of your unique qualities start to come forth, and you give birth to the new human. That's what I think. So
and
I
agree.
I'm becoming a new human.
I think we all are, and I am so grateful for this time with Barbara. I'm so grateful for you, our audience, who is listening to this. And stay tuned. There will be many more opportunities for you to grow and listen with Barbara Marx Hubbard.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.